Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about flawless software developers. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, as a software engineering manager, how do you identify areas of improvement that would add value for a top-notch software engineer who is flawless? Well, I think that this is one of those experiences where you will have to humble yourself a little bit and think about that this person is probably not flawless, or like there are absolutely things that this person can improve in. It's just most likely that they are so good at what they do that you can't really come up with something that could fit into the traditional way we help people improve. And that is, the simple stuff is, oh, this person seems to be a little bit socially awkward, or this person isn't so good with CSS or with a specific programming language, or maybe with ops or something like that. And then you buy them a course. The problem is that these sorts of learning methodologies, they're actually, it's not that many that sort of make that connection, but guys, that sort of learning is usually only applicable to people who know almost nothing or very little about this given topic. It's the way we teach our children because they don't know any better. These are concrete skills and areas that they are completely fresh to. But it's a very different world when it comes to learning, at the very least, for someone who is really good at this stuff. It is why I think it's sort of interesting that there's not that many people who make the connection between experts and how they usually get more from sharing ideas and hearing ideas from other experts. It's not about teaching people a concrete technique. Usually I find that is the most valuable thing for people who are really, really good. It is that they get a way of thinking that inspires them in their own work. That is the thing that a lot of the more senior software developers are getting benefits from. There are absolutely skills to always learn. I mean, if you never worked with Kubernetes, for example, then learning Kubernetes is, it's still something that is applicable. But for you as the software engineering manager, you have to sort of humble yourself here and realize that you're probably not going to be able to identify yourself, because it's likely that you don't possess the same level of skill as this person in the engineering department, what concrete skill they were going to benefit from learning. So I argue that whenever you're going to help anybody sort of grow or teach someone or something like that, you have to start with a fundamental question. And you've seen probably me ask this question many times when I have people come and ask, what programming language should I learn, what should I do next, etc., etc. And I always start with the same question: where are you going? What is your goal? What do you want to achieve? Because you're learning skills to achieve some value of some sort. And you will be surprised at, well, maybe you won't be surprised, because I'm never surprised, almost, where people say, oh, I just want to be a really good software developer, or oh, no, I don't really know, because most people don't know why they're learning stuff. And so what I tell people in that scenario is that if you're dealing with a top-notch software developer, because we have to remember that you're in a professional environment, and this person is getting paid to produce money for your company, if they don't have any ideas of their own, and you don't get a sense that they have a drive to improve, or like they're not hungry to learn more, they're not unhappy, don't fix it. Don't try to fix it. This person is not in a state of mind where they want to learn more, like go further, and that's fine, because they're already top notch according to you, right? So they're doing a great job, and then just leave them, because some people are not hungry for learning and lifelong learning and all of this stuff that we talk about, right? Some people just want to reach a certain level, and that's fine as long as they meet the requirements, right? On the other hand, if you do sense that this person has a desire to learn, and you ask them what they would like to learn, if you're lucky, they do this thing, as I said, like they say that I want to learn Kubernetes, or I want to learn about security or crypto or something like that. These are simple requests that I think should be fairly straightforward. Then you help them by providing course material or opportunities of study and things like that. On the other hand, this one that I've had the greatest success with when you deal with people who are so good that they sort of have, well, they have a desire to learn. It's just that they can't really benefit all that much from anything that you could provide within the professional context, which is actually very common. A lot of companies make this sort of, in my opinion, erroneous assumption, and that is that by just providing like Udemy courses or something like that, that the person who is going to evolve or going to be helped is that they're sort of going to just do that by themselves. And this is where it gets interesting, I think, because you can provide these learning tools, and I will think that most managers will be able to relate to that there's a lot of accounts that go unused when we talk about self-learning and things like that. It's very rare that I've been in any company where they provide learning opportunities where like significant amounts of employees are using that material. So I'm usually the one who raises my hand and say, instead of giving people corporate accounts to this sort of stuff, just pay for the individuals who actually are using it, because most are not, they're there to work and they don't actually want to improve all that much. But the thing that really hits the mark I've seen is when you give the person who wants to evolve, who is an expert in some way, a challenge they have to overcome, a concrete exercise that they need to fix. What do I mean by that? It's very simple. You have to ask them to make something or solve a problem for the company. One of my favorite philosophies is that the best career ladders or best learning strategies or development strategies for any person within a company is to align their desires to grow with needs of the company. Because rather than having someone say, oh, I want to learn about cryptocurrency, and your company doesn't actually do anything with crypto, then you're sort of, it's sort of like, it's not a benefit to the company to have this person learn about it. Instead of doing that, give them, especially experts like this, like really top-notch engineers, give them a true challenge that the company is struggling with. An example would be me. I have one of the companies that I worked for had an enormous ecosystem of microservices, and the problem that they had was that all the APIs all these services were owned by different teams. So all the APIs were inconsistent, and no one could really figure out who depended on what service. In other words, you could never deprecate anything really without risk, because you didn't know what systems were connected to, or like where like all the communication went, and so forth and so forth. And so the challenge for me was to figure out, okay, how can I make all the APIs consistent across an ecosystem of like hundreds of people, and B, how can I, together with that, figure out who is depending on who in this ecosystem, who is connecting to what system on what endpoints, and so forth and so forth. Now, that is basically a project. And the idea being that if I take on that project, it's similar to doing a course or something like that. It's a dynamic problem where I have to use creative thinking to basically figure out something that is very, very complicated, and it's going to grow me as a person. And I think that your software engineer will respond very well to the same sort of challenge. And the best part is that this is actually, if you have problems like this is actually an opportunity for you to teach and develop this software developer, and at the same time gain benefits for your company. Because some problems, I can only speak for myself, sometimes a software developer gets sort of, how do I put this, bored with the regular 9 to 5 work that they do within the backlogs, and sort of just a regular depending on who they are, like product development and so forth. And it's usually a very refreshing change of pace for a software developer to get a challenge like this, where you're actually now going to metacode. You're going to try to figure out, how can I solve this problem for our organization? And this is a very complicated problem, and I've always found that the top-notch software engineers, they usually respond really well when you give them a very hard and interesting problem. And this way you don't actually have to figure out how to help them improve. You simply have to figure out yourself within your company, what are the big problems that you're facing, and then you become their stakeholder. You go and ask them, would you be interested in figuring out one of these sorts of, like, here are some problems that we really struggle with. Are you interested in using this as a way of learning how to develop yourself, or like something like that? Because these sorts of issues are usually, they're non-standard and they require a lot of creative thinking. It's just something I've seen work really, really well. So what I want you to take away from this is that the way you identify how to help a top-notch software developer is usually that you start talking to them. First and foremost, you sort of have to admit for yourself that it's probably very unlikely that you're going to be able to just look at them work and spot, hey, this person is really bad at this or needs to improve in that, and so forth. Because the top-notch engineers are usually so good that it's hard to spot what they actually are lacking, unless they have some very overt thing that they're really, really bad at, right? But start by talking to them and try to figure out where they're heading with their career, and then see if they have any ideas of their own. If they have ideas of their own, just listen to them. But if they don't have any ideas and they don't seem to be unhappy, don't try to force them to be lifelong learners, guys, because it's not going to work. You're basically, it is the problem of the world, right? That some people are very ambitious, hungry, and want to push things and do things, and some people are very lazy. It depends on the spectrum, right? And they don't want to do a lot of stuff, right? And since this is already a high performer, you don't have to worry so much. Then they're gonna come and request more stuff from you if they're interested. Otherwise, just keep them around for as long as they are relevant to the company, because we can't forget that this is about making money for the company and not like school or something like that. And then as a final suggestion, if it turns out that they want to learn something, they're not really sure what they want to do, I always say that make it somebody's job. Always make it their job if you want to see them improve. If you want to put them in a leadership position or some type of role or something like that, or as I said, give them an interesting problem, give them responsibility to fix something for your company that is very tricky for the company to figure out, and let that be their learning platform, because it's sort of the same thing as these masters, scientists or whatever. Like, these people are academically gifted to the point where they sort of quote unquote know everything about the academics. Like, there's no more theory for them to learn. So the only way that they're going to learn more is through experimentation. But in order for you to experiment, you need to have a problem. You need to have a goal of some sort. So you, as the manager, you can be the person who sets the requirement. You can be the stakeholder who creates the problem that needs solving, and then you let the software developer experiment or like figure out, okay, how do I do this? That is going to develop them as well. It is the challenge-based learning style, which I think is the only way people learn when they get to a point where traditional academics no longer cut it, because they're so good at this stuff that they actually need to learn from things that are outside of the normal content that you might find within any given topic. Have a great day.